Hello, and welcome to our webinar on everything DiSC. My name is Kim Peffley, and I'm a consultant with NHPA. Today, we're going to cover several different categories about everything DiSC. First of all, we're going to talk about what is everything DiSC, and then we'll learn a little bit more about the DiSC model. We'll also talk about the DiSC theory, which is ultimately how DiSC works. We'll look at different characteristics of all four of the DiSC styles, and we'll talk about how DiSC can help you personally and also help your business. Then we'll talk about all the different types of DiSC assessments. So let's jump right in. What is DiSC? Everything DiSC is a personalized development learning experience that measures an individual's preferences and tendencies. And by preferences and tendencies, we mean patterns of behavior. And it's all based around what we call the DiSC model. All the participants that are joining or participating in DiSC will receive personalized insights that will deepen their understanding of not only themselves, but also others, making workplace interactions enjoyable and more effective. DiSC really measures different dimensions of your personality, but it doesn't measure intelligence, aptitude, or your values. And it truly is personalized. When you get your DiSC assessment, it will be written directly for you and about you. And you'll get a lot of details that you'll start reading and say, that really makes sense, or that adds up. And you'll feel like this reports for me. The result in the end is a way more engaged and collaborative workforce that can spark meaningful culture improvement in your organization. And by that, I mean your team will start working better together because not only will they have more of an understanding of how they work, but they'll have a better understanding of how their team works. And when you understand yourself and your team better, you will have a more effective workplace. So let's talk about this DiSC model. The DiSC model is simple, yet powerful, and it describes four basic behavioral styles: the D, the I, the S, and the C. The DiSC profile describes how you respond to things that challenge you, or how you may be influenced, or how you influence other people. It can describe what your preferred pace is. Are you fast-paced or slow-paced? And it also will tell you how you may prefer to respond to rules and regulations. So let's break those down a little bit. The D stands for dominance, the I stands for influence, and the S stands for steadiness. Last but certainly not least, the C stands for conscientiousness. We'll get into each one of those styles here in just a moment. But first, let me tell you a little bit about the history of DiSC. DiSC has a long-standing history, and it started well back in the 1920s. It really started in the psychology and research side, but became nationally used and more industrial used in the 70s. It's changed and adapted many times throughout that time period, but it's always been engaging, and it's always been designed to make sure that everyone can truly understand more about themselves. We'll talk about a lot of the different aspects of DiSC, but know that DiSC is always evolving to make sure it stays up with the most modern of times. Let's talk a little bit more about what DiSC is as the heart of it. First of all, there are a couple rules that we go by, and I'm going to break those down a little bit for you. First of all, everyone is a blend of all four DiSC styles. Usually 1, 2, maybe 3 different DiSC styles will stand out more than the others, but know that everyone has a mix of all of the styles within them. Each person has a unique behavioral pattern with different styles and priorities, but I want to emphasize that no one style is better or worse than the others. We always have this question whenever we have a training or a webinar, which stands out the best. They're all equally valuable. And in fact, we believe that because they're all different, it brings more value. Think about if the whole world acted exactly as you did. It would either be crazy or boring, right? So we don't necessarily want to have that. We really want to find the value in seeing the differences amongst ourselves. And once you really learn to assess the differences within yourself and the rest of your teammates, you can really harness that value and have better workplace communication. And ultimately, a healthier organization can become possible. So when we talk about the rules of DiSC, we call them the cornerstone principles. I've pulled the cornerstone principles of the everything DiSC workplace. And the reason why I emphasize that is because each of the assessments has their own cornerstone principles, but they're all wrapped around the same general ideas. They just may adapt somewhat to which style it is. It may be a little more manager-based, or Agile EQ may be a little bit more emotional-based. This one's about everything workplace, and it's generally the most commonly used. So again, we touched on the first one, which is all styles are equally valuable and that everyone is a blend of all 4 styles. Your work style is very much so influenced by other things outside of DiSC, well beyond DiSC's control, such as your life experiences, how you were brought up, what education you have, and maybe how mature you are. But you do need to understand yourself better first to be able to understand everyone else around you, and that's really where DiSC is focused. We're going to learn a lot about ourselves and become more self-aware of where we are so that we can then learn more about being effective with our coworkers. Then we'll learn about other people's DiSC style within our organization, and not only just at work, but you can take this at home as well. You'll learn about what their priorities are and how they may be different from your own and how that's okay. But we just need to understand what those are. And then we'll also take all of that and learn how we can improve the quality of our workplace. And simply by using DiSC to build those more effective relationships. The better we know ourselves and the better we can adjust and adapt to the styles around us, the more effective we can be within a workplace. It's important to note that DiSC is not a diagnosis, it's a dialogue. It's designed to open up conversation and really talk about what works. So let's talk about how DiSC works. DiSC is an assessment tool. So you will be given a test of sorts, really we call it an assessment, and it takes about 15 to 20 minutes. What we do is we email that assessment directly to you, and you'll answer a series of questions. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes, and the reason why we say it varies in time is because DiSC is an adaptive testing tool, which means that it's sophisticated and it adapts to you answering those questions. So let's say it asks you a couple questions. Are you fast-paced? And you will answer on a scale of 1 to 5. And say one time you ask the question, or they ask the question and you answer with a 5. And then the next time you ask the same question and you answer with a 1. It's going to think, hey, I'm not sure that they saw that correctly, or I'm not sure that that was right. So it's going to bring it back around. And it's going to say, hey, let me ask that one more time, but in a slightly different way to make sure that we've got the answer that we're looking for, to make sure that it's incredibly precise. That profile and the answers to the assessment that you take then translates right into a personalized report for you. So your assessment really will have a personalized narrative, including your name and specific actionable items that will make it really memorable for you. It's really fun to have everyone reading through their assessments, and they will read it and they'll look up and they'll say, how did you know that about me? Or who did you pay off to get these secrets? But ultimately, it's really how you answer the questions on the assessment. And it really becomes a fun, lively part of it. And who doesn't love to read a little bit and learn a little bit more about yourself and really feel more assured about what you've learned? It's important to know that when we're talking about the assessments, that all of the personality assessments are application-based and they're really application-focused. So when you get your feedback, it will be specifically designed based on the assessment you took. And there are several different types of assessments, and we'll talk about those at the end. But if you're taking one on workplace, it'll give you information about how you act within the workplace, or manager, how you lead, or individual contributor, or even the salesperson. It'll give you specific, memorable, actionable items based on you being a salesperson. So let's get into DiSC theory, and I promise we won't go too deep, but I want to give you a general idea of how the 2 dimensions of human behavior affect the DiSC assessment. Although DiSC is really described in 4 basic styles, the model at itself is really 2-dimensional. You'll see a couple circles on your screen, and it talks about different types of characteristics and what your human nature is, and really how you can hold your behavior or how you react. So let's start with the vertical dimension. When you see this circle here, you're going to see a circle that says, on the top, it says fast-paced and outspoken, and on the bottom, it says cautious and reflective. So you'll see that the vertical dimension is best described as a level of activity that's ranging from active and thoughtful, or active to thoughtful, right? So people with DiSC styles at the very top of the circle tend to be fast-paced and are often described as assertive or dynamic or even bold. Conversely, the people on the bottom of the circle have styles that are more slow-paced or more cautious and reflective, and they tend to be more moderate or considered to be moderate-paced. They're often described as calm and methodical and careful. So now let's look at the left and the right of the circle. The horizontal dimension really measures from questioning all the way over to accepting. So people with the DiSC style that falls towards the left are tending to be more questionable or skeptical. And they tend to be considered more logic-focused, objective, challenging, or even reserved. Now, on the right-hand side, they tend to be more accepting and warm. They're described as people-focused, empathizing, receptive, and even agreeable. So that kind of explains a little bit about DiSC theory when we're talking about the two different sides or top and bottom of the circle. So let me ask you, as you're listening to this, which one of those really resonated with you? Let's start with the circle on the left. Are you more fast-paced and outspoken or more cautious and reflective? Remember your spot. Are you on the top or the bottom? Now, on the other circle, questioning and skeptical or accepting and warm? Where did you find yourself landing? Let's say, for example, you found yourself to be considered fast-paced and outspoken, but also questioning and skeptical. You'll then find yourself in the upper left-hand side of the corner, which is where you'll note the green area. Or let's say, conversely, you were cautious and reflective and accepting and warm. Then you'd be in the lower right-hand side, which is the blue area. Or vice versa, maybe you're in the yellow or the red. So what do those colors mean? We're going to talk about those next. I think it's important to note that when you're looking at this, which we call the people reading activity, it's always best to say you presume or you may believe what someone is, but you can't diagnose what someone's personal DiSC style is. The only way to truly know what someone's DiSC style is to take an assessment. But this tool can be helpful when you're trying to narrow down or determine where you think someone's area might fall. So let's talk about the 4 quadrants of DiSC. Let's start with the D in the upper left-hand corner, which was the green area we saw earlier. The D style, which stands for dominance, is an active and questioning style. It describes people who are direct and forceful and often outspoken in their own opinions. The I, the red quadrant in the circle, stands for influence, and it's more active and accepting. This describes people who are outgoing, often very enthusiastic and lively. The S in the bottom right-hand side stands for steadiness, and this style is really thoughtful and accepting. It describes people who are gentle, accommodating, and patient. And the last style, the C style, is the conscientiousness style, and they are very thoughtful but questioning. This describes people who are analytical, reserved, and very precise. When you're looking at the DiSC circle, which we call the DiSC circumplex, you'll see that it actually gets a little bit more detailed than just the 4 quadrants we were talking about in the last slide. In fact, there's 12 pieces in this puzzle here. And so you'll see within each one of the quadrants that it breaks down even further. So you'll see in the red, for example, you'll see I, D, I, and IS. Really, that is because that is where your final dot will be placed. And so when you take an assessment, you will get a dot. And that dot really plots on the map exactly where you are or where you feel the most comfortable. It's an area that you may find to be in your most comfort zone. So in this map that you see here, you'll see that there's been a dot placed right by the eye. So it's in the center of the puzzle right by the eye. This means that this person's style is an I. Had that dot gone a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, their style would have changed. They could have been an ID, which they would still be overall an influence style, but they may have characteristics also of the D style. So their dot is very close to both circles. So they may be an ID. Or vice versa, they could have gone a little closer to the IS and they would have had influence as their overall style, but steadiness would have been another strong characteristic of theirs. And it would have been another area that they felt very comfortable. So Everything DiSC officially defines a style as a set of typical responses that are expected from a person. So you will find that the person whose dot is here is quite comfortable in the influence area, but they're also going to be potentially could go closer the other directions. There's one other thing to note about the dot that you'll notice here, and that's what we call your inclination. If you look at the DiSC map for several different people, you'll notice that not everyone's dot is placed in the same distance from the center. So for example, on the left-hand side, you'll see that someone has a slight inclination. That means their dot is very close to the center, where all the way in the upper right, you'll see that someone has a strong inclination where their dot is almost outside of the circle. There's no doubt that the person who has the strong inclination or the dot almost to the outside of the circle has pronounced characteristics of that style. And they definitely will probably fit the bill for all things that you would consider an influence style. Whereas someone in the slight category, their dot is a little bit closer to the center, so they'd be a little bit more balanced amongst all four of the styles. This will describe it a little bit better. There is a perfect example of where your dot may lie, and then there's some shading. So shading around the dot provides a rough approximation of a person's comfort zone. Your personality really will reinforce the message that all four styles are within each person. So both of these characteristics here are showing shading in all four areas. And that's why we know that they are able to have all four of those characteristics. However, there may be more or less of a certain one. For example, on the left, you can see that the whole eye puzzle is filled, right? That whole piece of the pie is filled. But only about half of the S's and about half of the D and maybe about a third of the C is filled, meaning that they can flex to all areas, but they're most comfortable in the eye. Now, on the other side, you'll see an eye style with accuracy. And that means that they are comfortable in all those areas, but they also have a strong inclination to have things be accurate. These shading and stripes, as we call them, are designed or defined by the priorities of DiSC. And let's talk about those. The priorities are primary areas that we focus our energy. So where are you most comfortable? Where do you naturally like to be? If you don't care about accuracy or it's not something that's a high priority, you're not going to stay in that space and be comfortable. But if it's incredibly important to you, then your dot is definitely going to show it. And the closer your shading comes to that priority, the more likely you are to find energy in that area. And so everyone has, like we said, a minimum of 3 priorities. And you'll see with the eye style, their priorities are the words around the outside. So their style is action, enthusiasm, and collaboration. Those words will really resonate with them. But the person on the right had the same 3 action items or the same 3 priorities, but they also put a high level of passion or energy towards accuracy. And so they got to have stripes. Most folks will have 3 priorities, but you can have upwards of 5. Again, no assessment is better than the other. So if you don't have stripes, it's okay. You don't have to have stripes. It's very common to not. Only about 1/3 of respondents will actually have that extra priority or have that stripe. So let's talk more specifically about each one of the categories. The D profile, they really emphasize shaping their environment by overcoming opposition and really just accomplishing results. They are go, go, go. They like to be the person who is competitive and they're winning and they love to succeed. They prioritize accepting challenges, taking action, and achieving immediate results. They're described really as direct, results-oriented, firm, strong-willed, sometimes even forceful. They really fear being seen as vulnerable or being taken advantage of, and they really value the competency of others around them. They will need to expend more energy if it requires time to show patience or display sensitivity or if they feel like they're losing control of the audience. They definitely don't like to get bogged down into the details as well. When you're communicating with the D style, I recommend you give them the bottom line and cut to the chase. Focus your discussion with them and keep it brief and make sure you give them the details that they need, but don't bog them down with lots of details. The I style stands for influence, and people with the I style really place an emphasis on shaping the environment around them and influencing and persuading others. A person with the I style is described as convincing and magnetic, enthusiastic, and people really trust them. They're known for being optimistic, and they really still like to take action, but with collaboration. So they want to do it with the team. They're all about expressing enthusiasm, jazz hands. They definitely stand out in the crowd. They're motivated by social recognition. They love group activities, and they really like building relationships. They fear being alone. They fear disapproval, and they certainly don't like to work in single groups. They prefer to work with a whole group together. They don't like to be limited, and they really like to have the ability of freedom of expression. If they're silenced or pushed back, it makes them very uncomfortable. Their goals are victory with flair, which is, I think, again, why this picture is perfect. They prioritize friendship and happiness, and they really like to be considered prestigious or have special status symbols. And they love to be popular. They'll need to expend more energy if they're trying to research all the facts or bog down into deep details, if they have to work directly or work singly by themselves and not directly with their teams. When communicating with the I style, I would recommend that you share your own experiences or allow them to ask questions. Make sure you let them talk. And make sure you focus on the positives. They don't like to talk or get bogged down with a lot of negative things. So let's talk about the S style. S stands for steadiness. People with the S style place an emphasis on cooperating with others in existing circumstances. So they love to be around folks, but they don't like change. The person with the S style is really motivated by cooperation and opportunities to help others around them. They really do it for genuine, sincere appreciation of their team. They prioritize giving support and collaborating with each other and really just maintaining that comfortable level of stability that's already there. They're described more as being calm and patient, even-tempered, accommodating, tactful, and humble. Their goals are personal accomplishments, but in a group setting. They like the maintenance of status quo, and they really don't like to change or adapt to new things. They'll need to expend extra energy if things change quickly or if things are adapting too fast, if you ask them to multitask or if you ask them to confront someone else on their team. When talking to an S, make sure you talk to them with sincere appreciation and talk in a level that makes sure that they know you care for them. So let's talk about the C style, which is conscientiousness. The C style is really someone who emphasizes working on continuously working through the circumstances that we have and really diving into the deep level of quality and accuracy. They're very analytical and they like to dive into the numbers. They're motivated by opportunities to gain additional knowledge, show off their expertise, and really produce quality work, which means they don't like to be rushed. They want time to work through the numbers. They're described as analytical, reserved, precise, systematic, and private. They really strive for quality and accuracy. Their goals are to make sure that things get done right. They want everything to be correct and in its place. Cross the T's and dot the I's. That would drive a C crazy, right? They're all about personal growth, but within learning and gaining knowledge. It'll take more energy for someone with the C style to let go of a task or delegate it to someone else, as they're most comfortable doing the work themselves so that they can prove that it is 100% done correctly. When you're talking with someone with the C style, it's really important not to get emotional, not to bring in different details that they don't necessarily need that are emotional based. But you want to bring in the facts and the details, and you want to make sure that you give them the time that they need to review those. So if you're meeting with someone that has a C style, give them the data and the information before you meet with them, and then come into the meeting. It'll be a much more productive meeting. So again, we go back to what we called our people reading activity. You've learned a great deal about those 4 styles, and maybe one really resonates with you now, maybe 2. Maybe you felt a lot that you resonated with the I and the D, and you may be an ID or a DI. But generally, this is our tip that we recommend to go back to when you're starting to think about where someone may fall. So this people reading activity, if nothing else, can help you with sales. Think about how you may like to shop. It may be different than how your customer, specifically a certain customer of a different style, may like to shop. So when you look back on this webinar, I hope that you think about this people reading activity and which one was most effective to you. But let's talk now about you and your business and how DiSC can really help you. The power of DiSC is taking the assessment, learning about it, going to the webinar, but keeping it alive within your business, because truly all of these items on this slide could be actionable. It can help not only you discover what your priorities are in the workplace, but it can also help your teammates know what yours are, or vice versa. You can learn more about theirs. It may be really helpful to learn about what motivates you and what stresses you so that you're aware of those characteristics. But think about how helpful it would be if your boss knew what motivated you, or if your boss knew what stressed you. What about you as a leader? Wouldn't it be great to know what motivates your team or what stresses your team? You could then make sure you're motivating them in the proper way or helping them avoid stress or not adding more stress to them. It will certainly help improve communication with others. When you know more about yourself and what you like, and then you learn more about what others like when it comes to communication, you can adapt your style. I am an I, if you haven't already figured that out, but I used to have to communicate with a lot of people that were different styles than mine. I still do every single day. But one person in particular was a C style, and we really struggled with our communication. After utilizing our DiSC assessments and really understanding each other's priorities better, we both got to communicate a lot better. You'll also learn some additional strategies to increase your effectiveness, and that's really what I'm talking about here. If you know more about your teammate and yourself, you will be more effective and you will get more done. You'll also learn more about dealing with conflict and how to relate to the different styles. You'll know that how one style may be stressed and they get loud, another style might get stressed and get quiet. And if you can learn what their style is, you can see some of the warning signs before conflict really arises. You can improve your coaching skills by adapting your style to their style to really get the message across, to make sure that your team is hearing the message you want them to hear. You can also improve your selling skills, which we talked about a bit ago, which is learn more about who your customers are and what their style may be. If they are a C style, they may want to know more about, let's say we're selling a grill, they may want to know more about the warranty or who's going to assemble it or where it was made. Whereas it may be an I style, may want to know more about how quickly you can get it to their house for their party, right? How fun can it be? What colors does it come in? And those are exaggerations, but it gives you a general idea. And the last and most important thing is it'll help you build and strengthen your team relationships by learning more about each other. And the more we know about each other and our teams, I can guarantee you it will improve the team performance. So another great aspect of everything DiSC is that there are several options available. So let's go through the application suite and let's talk about all of the different types of assessments that are available. You may find that one really stands out more than another, which is great. We can customize and build what will work best for you and your business to make sure you're getting the most out of everything DiSC. So we talk a little bit about workplace throughout this webinar, but it is ultimately probably the most popular one that goes out there. It is specifically designed to engage every single individual, building more effective relationships at work. So what will you get from everything DiSC Workplace? You'll get, again, we talked about an in-depth self-discovery. You'll learn so much more about yourself and about what your style is. And we focus a lot on that to make sure that you truly understand. You'll also get a better appreciation for the different types of work styles that are around you, for your coworkers and the styles that they have. You'll also get 3 specific strategies for successful interactions with your coworkers. The newest addition to the suite is Agile EQ, and it was definitely needed. Agile EQ really will help you develop the emotional intelligence that you need to support a thriving agile culture. And there's a lot of talk about EQ, and this report is really helpful to break it down in a very helpful manner. And I found it to be really interesting when I took this assessment. It really helps you discover your own personal EQ strengths and how you can build off of those, as well as recognizing some of the areas you may need to work on, some of your EQ potential, and some tools and tips that you can use to get better. So it will make an opportunity for you to commit to those customized strategies and build a better emotional intelligence and help you be more agile within your business. The next is management, and this one we use a great deal as well. It helps to teach the managers within your business to successfully engage and motivate and develop them around you. It gives specific tips for that. So first, you'll discover, again, your own personal management style. You will learn a little bit more about how to direct, delegate, and motivate your team. And you will also get additional strategies to support long-term development. This is important here, especially if you use tools like IDPs or individual development plans. You can take these specific strategies and put them in long-term growth to make sure you have continued development for your managers, which is so important. Productive conflict really helps you harness the power of conflict by transforming those destructive behaviors and turning them into more positive responses. Conflict is going to happen, but we need to know how to harness it in a powerful way and how to do it in a more productive way, how to learn what's happening so that we can control the situation and not have the situation control us. So you will, again, be more self-aware of how you react to conflict, or maybe some of the typical responses that you may have, and how to either improve them or to control them. You will also learn different ways to respond to how others handle conflict and what you can do to help in the situation. And then you'll get specific steps to help you change the responses from destructive to productive, because conflict can be productive if handled the proper way. Next is sales, and this one's really powerful, especially if you have a sales team. It provides sales folks with the skills they need to adapt to the customers' preferences and expectations. So they'll learn a lot about their own personal sales style and how they are as a sales folks. And they'll learn more about recognizing what the customer style might be, or the different types of customers. And then they can learn some strategies on how to adapt their style to the style that will be best fit for reaching the needs of the customer. There's also one that's called Work of Leaders, which is a really great assessment. I recommend this for senior leadership teams, or if you have multiple stores, it's good to do over a series of managers. It can help really create impactful leaders through the process of vision, alignment, and execution. And you really go through each one of those steps and learn more about what each one of them means and how you really handle each one of them. So you'll get first that simple, compelling model of leadership, which is the vision, alignment, and execution. And then you'll learn some personal insights on how to leverage and harness your strengths and really overcome any challenges you may have in those areas. And then you'll get a clear path for improvement. There's a true suggestion. There's a supplemental report that goes along with this. So not only can you do an individual assessment of yourself and learn a little bit more about that, you can then take one for everyone in your organization or your team that took that. So if your entire senior leadership team took it, we can take a report and it looks across the board at how strong you are as a team or what areas you may need to work on. For example, if you take this as an assessment and everybody's really good at the vision aspect and doing pretty good in alignment, but we've got a 0 for execution, we know we're going to need to focus on execution and really dive into how we can handle that situation. And the tips and tools will come through those assessments to tell you how to get there. And last is what we call our 363 for leaders. You may have been familiar with the 360, and this is very similar to that, but it comes with a little bit of extra, a little extra kick. So this will help elevate the leaders to be more effective, and it really is a really helpful 360 dynamic tool. The reason why it's called 363 is it actually comes with 3 actionable items to elevate your own personal effectiveness. So 3 takeaways that you can walk right away and try to utilize to put into place. The interesting thing about this report is when you take it, you'll get an assessment of where you think you are, and then where your team thinks you are, where your managers think you are, where maybe the owners think you are, and how varied those reactions may be. You'll get feedback from everyone that's involved, and you'll learn more about how they're feeling and how you may be feeling and how very close those are or how far apart they can be. So you'll definitely get what we like to call focused and balanced constructive feedback, because it really takes that information and puts it into those actionable items. So as you can see, there's a lot of different options when it comes to everything DiSC, and there really is an assessment that will be perfect for you. I hope you learned something new about not only yourself today, but a little bit more about the Everything DiSC program. And if you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to help you, and we hope you reach out today. Thank you.